Okay. Uh, um, let's wait for Castuk to rejoin again if he's joining. Right. So far, are you following up until now? Let me get the chat out. Okay. Meanwhile, another thing I'm going to do, which you may want to probably do as well when you are working on this stuff, right, is to run Stationeers, so you can have a look at how some of the game prefabs defined everything in inside. Right? Now, this is a very simple prefab. It doesn't have any slots or anything. If you had a prefab with slots, like let's say the power tool, which is a prefab that has slots, right? You won't only define the box. Have a look. This is the battery. This is the battery slot. This is where the battery goes, right? And this is what gets highlighted when you get the battery nearby. You know, this box that shows up in the game. That's where the box is defined. This is just a collider kind of thing, and then the game will actually use a shader to highlight that box. On this, not only you need to define the actual collider, you have to go to the asset, and then you have to define the slot, the type of the slot, provided with the transform or the collider of the item, right? So that's basically a reference to this child of the thingy, and then define how the behavior of the collider is. That would be the collider to grab the item, and this is the collider to actually insert the battery. And that's where you define, right? So here I can only insert batteries. This triggers the slot one actions, is interactable, is swappable. It scales again the item to the real world, and then every other thing about this slot. Now, more complicated things like the shuttle that actually has a few slots. That's the one I was working on making this app, right? So basically, this one has one slot here, which is very hard to see for the battery. It has another slot for the battery. Then it has the slots for the tanks here, has the slot for the filter there. And then it also has one massive collision box. That's the box, the habitat box inside this thingy. So when you get inside, the code detects the collision, and then it connects the suit atmosphere to the world, sorry, not to the world atmosphere. It actually redefines the world atmosphere of the suit as the atmosphere in the shadow, which is one of the tests that I was doing. So when you enter this room, you actually get whatever atmosphere is in this room, which is defined as a custom atmosphere inside this object with a custom component that is internal atmosphere script. This one is just a custom class of the game that defines atmospheres, internal atmospheres for items, things like that. Right, so with the game open, if you have installed the Unity Object Explorer or any of the other mods, here you can actually search for prefabs, right? Let me get rid of this and this. And this, right? So here we test for, I don't know, let's say cooked tomato, because that's the one we were working on, right? Cooked tomato. So we have item cooked tomato, which is the name of the prefab. This is the prefab, right? Now this prefab has a transform, the cooked tomato class script, mesh filter, mesh renderer, riggy body, network identity, animator, and collider. Right. Now, if we go back to our project in here, we have defined our custom version of the potato with the transform, mesh filter, mesh render, the sphere collider, rig body, network identifier, and then our custom tomato thing, right? So basically, more or less, all the components match. The big difference is this one doesn't need an animator. Our own class doesn't need an animator for now because we are not using animators. Now, this is the cooked tomato class, and the cooked tomato class in the inspire here, which was this one, right? This inherits from stackable food. It has the interfaces for being packageable and then being an ingredient, right? But the most important thing is that it inherits from stackable food. The same way your custom class here, the one that we added here, it has the same attributes, meaning internally for the game, it will be just exactly the same. So if you go here now, examine cooked potato, here you will have all the attributes of all that definition. If you needed it for something, you can always come back here and copy stuff, like get max quantity, which is a 10, get process quantity, which is a 0.1, get quantity 1. Now, all these more or less, they would match the attributes defined in here, right? So let's say you want to put what's the max quantity of the stackable food, right? So here you can actually search for max quantity. Max quantity, this float value is a 10. This float value here is the exact same value as in here. If you want to check for used amount, right? It says use amount 1. So that's how you actually get help on how to fill all this stuff. We want to have that. We want to give it a similar nutrition value. So it says 25. Let's make it double on our case, 25. And then the speed of eating, its speed is 0.15. We can actually make it faster. We can give it a 0.5. Right? That's how you go defining every one of these attributes. When you don't know what they are, you can have a look at any predefined object and find similar values to that. Now, there is another thing that you may want to do when you actually put this on a smelting device. This is what it will come out with. So let's say you put this sphere into the air furnace and it will actually pop out copper, 2 of copper. It will still come out as a reagent, not as an ingot. But that's basically a way to get reagents from assets when you do that. And then there are other few attributes that you need to fill up manually. So this prefab name, it has to match your prefab name. And then we call this prefab name a sphere. Because we didn't rename that, we need to match this attribute here, the prefab name, with this prefab name. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to just rename this as test sphere, because that's the attribute that I want to change, keep changes, right? So that's the prefab that I want to open. Save, yeah, rename file. Oh my God, no, I did it the other way around. Test the sphere. And then open this prefab, right? Now, this prefab name needs to match this name. That's because this is being used somewhere inside the game code to find out the prefab. Same with the hash. So test the sphere needs to go here. And then the problem with the hash is that it needs to be the CSC32 of the actual prefab name. You're gonna need to find a way to do this CSC32. You can either use any script that you want, or you can go to any of the functions online and do this calculation for you. Like, for example, this one. It doesn't really matter. You have to put the same name here, test the sphere. It will calculate the value. You copy the value, decimal value can be negative, never hexadecimal, always decimal value. You put this value here, done. We can automate this later on. I mean, there can be a script in here in Unity editor provided by the mod tools to have this field, this value filled up automatically and updated every time you edit the prefab. That's something that we can do. We just haven't done it because at the moment it was only me doing this stuff. Now we need a transform here. We just drag and find the transform. This is actually a reference to this transform component. The bounds of this, you can have it defined as pretty much the size of the sphere. Let's say 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. I don't know the size of the sphere. You can get the size of, that would be the size of the model, right? So to give you an example of this, let's say the ingot, right? So the ingot, the prefab ingot has bounds of 0.3, 0.3, 0.3, which is just basically a box surrounding this thingy, nothing more than that. Now, surface area scale, surface area, all this is involved about heating. So let's say, I don't know, let's give it a random value for now. Render distance 30 is too much. Usually it's 5, the value for all these things. Count first to include yes. It doesn't have flames. This is filled up later on by the game when the game actually set the item on fire. Thermodynamics scale, heating, and weather damage scale. You can get them from the game if you don't know references to what these values used to be. So basically, here you will have the solar heating scale 0.1, thermodynamic scale 0.1, weather damage scale is 1, in case you want to change any of these, whether it's lit by the grow light or not. Owner Steam ID, shattering, and stuff like that. That's all up to you. Burning time, health. You can change this stuff as well. Whether it's a paintable material or not, you would actually drag the material that is paintable here into here. So you would go to a material folder and then drop the material here if you want it to be paintable. Interactables are, let me actually run the game here for a second. Interactables are the buttons that will show up when you press R on an item. So let's say on your helmet, you can open, you can close, you can unlock. On or you can split, you can do those different things, right? So that's basically this would be like right, those are the interactables, right? Those two buttons here. So basically, if you create interactables here, you're going to need to define all the different things for those attributes. So the action of the attribute, which has a lot of different slots, activate, import, whatever. Then the string and the hash, then the parent, which is the same object that you have to drag in here, the collider of this thing, if it has a fake collider or no, boundaries for those things. Best way to find out how to fill this one is, again, pressing F7, finding an item, and then see how they are set up. For example, on the project that I have here on the ingot, this one should actually have interactables, if I recall correctly, because this is an ingot. No, not this one. The ore has interactables. So the ore has a split one and a split half, right? So split one will be split one. Test one, the ore is a parent, so the main object is the parent. This is the same, the CRC32 of this string here. Then this would be button 1, split half would be button 2. It doesn't have an animation, can be interacted with a key, all those different things. You can even provide audio if you want to this. Audio events, audio sources, things like that. Right. Back to your project here. We have then the blueprint, which is another prefab, but this one is different. So the blueprint that I was talking about in the game is this. Let's say you grab this, or you actually have this. This green hollow item here, this special shader material, that's the blueprint object. And usually it's a very stripped down version of the actual object. So the still matches with this one. With this one is a different version of the object. This one that has less vertices, different things, so it doesn't actually have so much rendering to do. But that's basically what the blueprint is. So to make the blueprint of this project, basically what we can do, can go back to this, not in this one. we can go back to the scene, right? Save changes on this one, yeah. We create a new 3D object, which is basically the same, right? The sphere. This would be the test sphere blueprint, for example, right? And then this is the thing we need. It doesn't need anything more than this. I mean, it's just a visual representation, doesn't have any logic or anything, doesn't need to be a prefab with functionality. It's just an object that it will actually draw as a 3D wireframe thingy, right? So basically, we can save this as a prefab now. For now, we will adjust that stuff later. That's okay, right? So this is going to be our blueprint thingy. So if this is the materials. Hang on, sorry. This goes into prefabs. Right, so on the test sphere now here, on the blueprint section here, which is here, we drag the new item that we created, right? The new prefab thingy that we created. That's a prefab with just an object. That would be one thing. Now on textures, the problem with this show in Explorer, we don't really have anything now here. So what we are going to do is we're going to create a PNG, bitmap PNG, whatever, it doesn't really matter. This would be sphere icon. Let's edit it. Let's paint something red. Start. All good. We go back to Unity. And then on this icon here, we need to specify this is going to be a sprite 2D. That's everything. That's all we need to do. Now, in our prefab, yes, apply that. In our prefab, in the blueprint, in the thumbnail, sorry, we need to specify the sprite. So we just drag and drop this into here. Done. That would actually display this image here. This is the icon that I'm talking about. This is the image that we just created right now. Then anything else you need to actually do. The lights is filled up on the prefab spawning. You don't have to worry about that. This is rocket stuff. You don't need to worry about that. All this colliding, things like that. You don't need to worry about that. Now, this is about interactions and the slots where the device can go or this item can go. So basically, we can do this sorting class. We can specify which class is this object belonging to for the sorting devices. The recipe is going to be tier 1. The collision that is going to make, we can probably mimic the food one or whatever. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We can give it a portable air tank sound. No, actually, where that doesn't need to be anywhere. And then the slot type, that's food. So basically, we can probably find the more suitable type of thing, which is none. So basically, it can go into any slot that is not tool, that is not a battery or anything. We just leave it here. If we want, you can define this as a plant. So it can only go where plants are allowed. For example, the hydroponics and so that, or circuit or a bottle. We leave it as none for now. You can give it sounds, whether it has light or not. That's all defined in the by the game runtime when it's running. Fastest speed is 5. Then the rigid body needs to be dragged into here as well. So it finds a rigid body. If it's a small item like a dynamic item already and a small device, you need to fill it up here. Whether it has control for the atmosphere or not. If it's in a conveyor, the exit tool is how you disassemble this. So you need to provide tools here. Now tools here are a bit more complicated because they need to be this need to exist as prefab in the game, and they don't. But the thing is with tools, let me save this for a second and go back to the other project. With tools, there's a thing they did, which is basically this power tool, right? So this power tool, there is an attribute here that represent what tool can this tool replace. So I don't remember what it was. It was something around here. It's like an alternative tool that I don't recall the exact name right now. Tool replacement. Right, so this tool can replace another tool. Right, I thought I had it filled here, but it's empty. So what you can do is, if you want this sphere to behave like a drill, for example, you create like a drill empty class, and then you drag that prefab into this replacement tool. And this will actually work as a drill now, because this is a tool that can replace the drill tool. The best way to see this is if we go to any of the tools here. Probably the emergency tools are good examples. So let's say emergency angle grinder, right? This has an angle grinder class, but then here it will have replacement. See how this is replacement of the angle grinder, the actual proper angle grinder. But basically you can just create a custom fake angle grinder here that will behave as an angle grinder. And when you reference that one here, it will actually work as an angle grinder. But maybe I'm making things more complicated here. We don't need any of that. Precision IQ, if you want to have it, precision IQ, depending on your on the shape of your asset. Then allow forward cursor, that's different stuff. You want to have a price for the trader. If you want to decay differently than the default decaying thingy, decay food prefab, this is what this object is going to be turned into once it decays, right? So basically all food items here, if we go back to the tomato, cooked tomato, I'm not sure this one is going to have a prefab. Yeah, so the decayed food, all the food, when it decays to the same prefab, which is called decayed food, which is a custom prefab for when the food is decayed. We will need to find a reference to this during the prefab creation of this one, if you wanted to create the same decayed food. But you can define your own decayed food as well that will behave the same as the normal decayed food. It will just be a different prefab. You can just make a copy of the decayed food prefab and then put in your prefab, reference that prefab here, and every time this sphere decays, it will spawn this sphere and create the new and respawn the new decayed version of this prefab. But we don't need any of this for now. We can just leave it as it is, and that will basically be your item. Now, this is the default in-game things that it needs to be either spawn from the menu, being interactable with the inventory, all those sort of things. But you can actually add now more functionality if you just add your own custom component that does something else, like the AI tracking for the player, your drone stuff, all those different things that you wanted to do, right? With this, basically, we kind of finished the first version of the object. I believe I didn't leave anything. I want to believe I didn't leave anything. So now it will be a moment to actually export this mod. So you go here to export this mod. Can just put this one here. And then I know I don't need the copy assets at all. Can just close this one, right? So on assemblies, you have two things to do here. On assemblies, you want to add your assembly definition. That's what the mod is going to use to build the project, your own assembly definition. Come on, any minute now. All right. And then go back to export. I don't understand why it's so slow. I know there is a redraw book here that I need to fix, because when you get into assembly files, it actually goes super slow. It's like it's checking everything all the time, and I need to fix that. But then back to export now. We give it the name, drone mod, author, whatever, version, whatever, description, whatever, right? Then we want to include everything. And by everything, I mean all the prefabs, all the assemblies, all the scenes, right? We want to start up with code. You want to run your own code on startup. You can actually spawn a prefab or spawn a custom scene. The scene will be added to the game scene that is being loaded, right? But we want to do with code. And then we are going to use our main class, which is drone mod. And then the output of this is going to be, you can actually export directly into the game folder. So this is going to be not here. This is going to be your Stationeers game, Inake, plugins, stationery mods. That's it. That's where you want to go, right? And then you click export. And now we'll go have a look at the Stationeers. We can actually close this one. We'll go have a look at the station. Oh, don't tell me it crashed. No, it didn't. It's just too busy now. We want to go into Stationeers, Inake, plugins, stationery mods, and then you'll see there is example mod. And hello. Close the program. So there's something I just don't know what is it. Recompile before build. But it's usually way faster than this. Oh, there we go. Right. So I created the drone folder, the drone mod folder here now, which is 35 kilobytes. This is just the asset that it needs, nothing else. Let's run Stationeers now again. And now you'll notice the assets will be there, but they are still not added to the game. That's the problem. That's because we skip an entire step, and I did it on purpose. First, you want to understand that there's two different processes here. One is adding the assets to Unity. The other one is once they are in Unity runtime, you want to add them to the game, which are two different things. What we just did until now is adding the assets to the Unity runtime, meaning if I wait for the game to load and I press F7 to show the Unity Explorer, the test sphere should be there. Your materials, your shaders, everything should be there. So test sphere should actually be in here. What? Test cartridge, test food, test, hang on. Maybe test sphere. Right, test sphere blueprint, test sphere, they're already in the resources. So they are accessible for Unity, but the game still doesn't know what to do with them. Right, so we are at this stage now. They are already in runtime. Unity can access all these resources, right? Can access the game. This actually is a complete thingy defined. So basically, if we go here, now we went to for Unity object. So we have our test sphere has all these components. Our test sphere blueprint only has these components. That's basically all we needed now. All right, so let me just go back to the project here because we missed a few things that we need to fix now. And one of the things that we missed is on this scripts, the drone mod, which we actually created, but we had nothing in here. This is still not even a Inake plugin. This is right now only a mono behavior. Right, so it will execute. It will, if you put here the book log, something it will execute. The problem is that this assembly has not been loaded by Inake, so it has nothing to do, and it doesn't know anything about Inake, and probably doesn't know anything about the game yet. Now, to fix that, what I'm going to need you to do is just copy paste some code that I have already here, which is my main template script, which is this one, that has all the in-game initialization code in here, right? So if you can have a look here, onloaded is basically a function that's being called when the mod is loaded. See how this is now anymore a mono behavior, now it's a mod behavior. This is a bepping mod now, right? And when it's loaded, it will wait for all the prefabs to be loaded, and then it will run this event, which is attach prefabs. So once the game has loaded all the prefabs, then it will add our custom prefabs. And then it will go here and it will go one by one through all our references and all our content prefabs, making them and spawning them as a thing or a Unity thing and adding them where they need to be added. So if this is going to be, let's say, if the thing has lights, it will actually fix the lights. If the thing is a dynamic thing, it will add to the dynamic thing. If it's an ore, it will add to the item to the ore list. If it's an ingot, it will add the item to the ingot list. If it's a cartridge, and so on and so on, right? If it's a structure, it will add to structures. This is the same way the game does the initialization, by the way. If you have a look, let's say on prefabs loaded is the event, right? So if you go here to search for on prefabs loaded, which is only one, it's in the thing class, right? This function here, which is called, what is this one called? It's called in here, right? So basically, if you have a look at this, all I did was just copy how the game is loading the prefabs. So it will clear the list. I don't clear the list because what I want to do is I want to add to those lists. And then basically I'm doing just the same here. I'm instantiating the thing. I'm checking if the lights need to be fixed. Then I'm checking if this is an ore, and then I add it to the ore list. If it's an ingot, I add it to the ingot list. If it's a cartridge, I add it to the cartridge list. If it's a structure, and so on and so on, right? So basically all I did is copy the same way the game is adding the prefabs to the list, to the in-game lists. And then basically I only run after this function is being called. So basically, if you have an event defined here, call the event. This is what the mod is doing. I'm defining on prefabs loaded with a custom function, a custom event. And then when this event triggers, all I'm doing is I get all the referenced prefabs in my mod, and then I cycle through them and add them to the different lists the same way the game is doing, right? That's everything that needs to be done here. So what I'm going to do here now, let me remove all this. That's not really necessary. And then I'm gonna give you this code now. All you have to do is first probably add your custom namespace here because you are using namespaces, and then rename this as your drone mod or whatever class you have, right? So give me a second. Let me copy this. No, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this first on my project so you can have a look, and then you do it on your project, right? So namespace is ILO-def. Don't forget that. And all I want to do now is add a namespace here. All right, so everything now is in my namespace. And then instead of example mod, this needs to be called drone mod. That's all. Right, so copy that in the, where can I copy, or can I send you this file? Actually, hang on, let me, you know what? I'm going to send the file into Discord. That's where we all probably can grab it. So I need to go to the project, which is here, show and explorer, and then drop in here, which I believe this is the modding thingy. There we go. You can grab the file on Discord and then do the change yourself. Seven minutes. Well, it says 7 minutes. Yeah, they're good. Right, so let me know when you have done this because there's something else we need to do. Now, once you have a copy of this class, you don't even, you save this copy of the class and then you can just put it anywhere. I can actually put it as the default script as well in the stationary mods package. So when you create the package, it will actually create with the class. The problem with that is that it's going to give a lot of errors until you define the assembly definition, because it's going to try to actually build a script. But I can't do that probably as well. Maybe just leave everything commented or something like that. Yeah, because look, everything has been recorded from the beginning, everything, man. The only thing is that the files are split into Discord and the recording. So I'm sending the files to Discord, but the recording is on Zoom. That's the only difference. But it should be able, yeah, it should be able to recreate every single step from the beginning. Yeah, I mean, we still have 5 minutes if you want. There's something else we want to do, which is, I'll show you here on the other project, on the, okay, come on, any minute. On the other project, hang on a second, you'll see. Yeah, on the prefabs, exactly, that's where I want to show you. There is another custom class that I created for the blueprints for the wireframes, right? So if you go to, let's say, ingot, this is the blueprint for the ingot. This is the green hollow thingy that shows up. And see how it has a custom wireframe here? This custom wireframe is a custom class that's attached to an object. And on awake, what it does is it finds the renderer component and it finds the unlit alpha self-illum shader in the game, and then assign this shader and color to the mesh renderer, which is something that is being done on the default prefabs in the game. But in our case, because we don't have access to this shader is in the game, but we don't want to share shaders from the game, right? So all it does is when the object is spawned, we will actually go find that shader, assign that shader to the object, and then assign the color. And then it doesn't matter what material you do on the on your object, blueprint object, it will actually have the good shader and color to do the blueprint thing when you press T, and it will highlight and render as a green hollow, as a green hologram of the object. So basically that's another script that you're going to need. Let me go find this in custom wireframe in the Explorer, and then I'll throw that one as well into Discord because you want a copy of this script as well. Come on. There we go. So that would be the custom wireframe that you need to attach to all your wireframe objects, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually have a copy of this wireframe. Doesn't matter. The way you copy paste this one on your project is really relevant. So basically, I can just go here, make a script, which is a custom wireframe, I believe. Now you have to respect your namespaces. That's the only thing that you need to do. If you have namespaces, you have to recreate and respect those namespaces. So that's custom wireframe now has namespace, and all I need to do is just copy the awake function. I don't need any of the other functions here. So with that, that's all that this needs to behave as custom wireframe. And then on your prefab blueprint, this is the test sphere blueprint, open prefab, add component, custom wireframe, and that's it. Now it has a custom wireframe, right? So now, hang on, no, there's a problem here. This is inheriting from mock behavior. This needs to inherit from wireframe. There you go. So now in here, to just drag and drop the blueprint thing is going to ask for the mesh renderer and whatnot. Doesn't really matter. You just drag and drop. 1, 2, 3. Done. That's all you need to do. So now when the game spawns the blueprint object, it will replace the shader and then display the object as the green hologram of that. And then with that, you can restart the recording because now we have the code that adds everything to the game. We have the replacement of the wireframe shader. So basically now after we export this again, everything is already in place now and the item should be accessible on the game. So that's all we needed to do now. Done. Now the mod has been updated and we don't have time to run Stationeers here, but if you run Stationeers here now, everything should have been populated in the menus for the game. So we do that on the recording now, on the next recording. Restart now, please.